to Stacie's Corner. I'm Stacie. I hope you all had a wonderful weekend. And continue the City of Bone story. Valentine walks in and says, "It looks like I'm interrupting something here. And son, would you introduce me to this person? Is it one of the Lightwoods kids?" And he said, "No, this is my friend Clarissa Frey." And Valentine looks her over from head to toe and has like an astonishment, surprised look on his face, and his eyes fell on the dagger that's still in her hand. And he said, "Where did you get that dagger at?" And she said, "Jace gave it to me." And he said, "I see." And he said, "Can I have it?" And she says, "No," and steps back, and she feels the dagger being slipped from her fingers, and Jace hands it to her father, to his father, and she feels hurt, like betrayed, like he did this. And he looks at the dagger and he says this dagger had a twin to it. And you can see that it has the star of the Mortisans. And he said, "I'm surprised you still have this, Jace, and that the Lightwoods let you have it." And he said that they never pried into anything, and he said that's because they thought you were Michael Whalen's son. And he tells Clary that she should sit down, and she stubbornly says no. And he says, "Suit yourself, but what I have to say, you're probably going to wish you did." And she says, "I will let you know if that happens." So Valentine sits down and Jace sits beside him, and Valentine starts talking to her about what happened, that what you've heard or were taught was lies, that he is Jace's father, that Hodge lied to her and to all of them. And she said, "Of course he lied to us. He worked for you, and he was your pawn." And Jace said, "Shut up, Clary. No, he wasn't. He's the one that wanted the mortar cup for himself, and my father went there to stop him. He's also the one that took the ordered the Ravners against your mother." And Valentine found out, and he also went there to stop it. And she said, "No, that's all a lie. Hodge is working for him. I was there. You never saw me. I saw you take the curse off of him, and he gave you the cup." And Valentine said, "I did it out of pity, because he was just a piteous thing, a pitiful thing, and he was just bad." And she's like, "He's just lying." And he said, "No, you are Michael Whalen's son." And he said that, "I see that you're wearing my ring." And that the M or the W, when you flip it around, is the M. And he said what happened was Michael Whalen died in the uprising, and I took on his name and over his estate. When the uprising was over, because his best friends, the Lightwoods, were exiled, and he would also had that happen to him. So I took on the disgrace of his name and went and lived in his estate and read my books and took care of my son. And then until like 10 years passed, and I got a letter from somebody stating that they knew who I was, and if I did not take the steps and the right steps, that they were going to reveal it, and I could not let that happen. So I acted like I died, and to also protect my son, I had him come to New York and to be taken care of by the Lightwoods, because they would think that he was Michael Whalen's son, and because of that they owed him their gratification for being their son, and that's why they took care of him and loved him. And she said no, they loved him just because of who he is. And he said, that's probably not true. You would not know that, like I know the Lightwoods. And Jace did like a little shudder when he heard that. And Jace said, why are you not believing this? Why aren't you understanding this? And Valentine says it's because she loves you, or is in love with you. And he said, what? And he said, yeah, that's true, Jonathan. And let her get to the realization of it. And she's like, Jonathan, I thought your name was Jace. And he said, is that a lie too? And he said, no, Jace is my nickname. And nickname for what? JC. And she's like, Jonathan Christopher? And he said, how did you know that? And she said, because that's my brother. And for you to know that means, and he said, how could that be? And Valentine said, I could not tell you the story, hurtful story of your mother abandoning you before you returned for your first birthday. And she said, my mother never abandoned you. She would never leave her son with you. And Jace says, like, what? That means that my mother's alive? And he said, yeah, she's downstairs, asleep. And Jocelyn Frey is your mother, which means Clary's your sister. And he said, no, this cannot be true. And he puts his hands to his face, and Clary comes near him, and he's like, don't touch me. And he said, please tell me this is not true. And she couldn't. And Valentine said, now we all can be a family again, and we can go back to Idris. You will have everything that you wish for again, your father, a mother, and a sister. And right when he said this, they heard a commotion downstairs, and then all of a sudden Luke comes through the door, and Clary jumps up and sees blood all over him from like head to toe, and she runs to him, and he gives her a sidearm bear hug, and he says, I have blood all over me. And she said, and Valentine said, whose blood is it? And Luke looks at him and he said, it's Pagborn's. And Valentine has like this pain look on his face. And as he's holding Clary over, has his arms over her shoulders, and Valentine's like giving him this dirty look. And Luke says, now what is this? You have your wife chained to a bed that's out cold, and torturing her until she wakes up so you can get the information for the cup. And Jace was like looking at him like, what? And he said, I wasn't torturing her, and I just had her chained up for protection. And Luke said, the only protection she needs is protection from you. He said, that's not true. You're the one that had her turn against me, and had her betray me and leave me. And Luke said, no, she did that all on her own. She's the one that learned to hate you. And he told her to shut up. And he took the sword pointed to his chest. And he said, let go of my daughter. And Clary says, I'm not your daughter. And Luke pushes her aside and says, you need to go somewhere safe. And she said, I don't want to leave. And Luke said, go now. So right when she's about to leave, Jace stops her and says, are you freaking kidding me? There's Forsaken that just broke through the door, and they're going to take over this place. And they're going to tear you apart, so you're not leaving. And right when that happened, they heard clashing of the swords, and she looks around, and Jace grabs a hold of her to keep her from going towards them, and Luke is able to get to cut into Valentine's shoulder, and Valentine says, "Nice true hit," and he said, "Well, you're the one that taught me." And Valentine said, "That was many years ago. Now I thought that you would not need that because you have fangs and teeth." And he said, "Better to claw your heart out." And he said, "You already did that many years ago when you betrayed and deserted me back then." And he seemed like he was pained when he said it. And you also had my wife go also do that with you. And so Jace is realizing that Clary's is trying to talk to Jace to let her go by saying that you're going to let Valentine do this. He's the one that killed your grandparents, and also made people think that you were dead because he burned my grandparents and bones of a child, making it think it was you. And he said, "Well, that must have been really just a glamour." And Clary said, "Why don't you just ask your father and see if it was actually a glamour?" And he just tells her to shut up, and when he does, it makes Luke get distracted, which causes Valentine to strike right under his collarbone into his chest. And when that happens, he pulls out the sword out of his chest and kicks Luke's sword out of his hand as he falls to the ground. And Clary wiggles free and runs over to Luke and puts herself between Luke and Valentine's sword. And she can see that Valentine knows that she's there, and he still looks like he's going to strike her through her to go to Luke. And all of a sudden he hears a clang and looks up and sees blood coming from the hand that Valentine had the sword in, and looks at Jace, and he has his hand outstretched like when he threw his dagger. And Luke said, "I'm sorry, Father," and said, "True, nice throw, son." And he said, "But your hand," and he said, "Don't worry, I was not going to hurt your sister." And Claire's thinking, "Liar," and she looks at Luke, and he's coughing up blood, and she wants something like a piece of cloth to stop the bleeding. And Valentine says, "Stay there, son." And she said, "Are you going to just let him die? You're just being a murderer." And he said, "You're trying to protect this demon. You need to move." And she said, "We're not, we don't kill these. We kill demon hunters. We kill demons." And he said, this creature is a demon with a man's face on it, and you're protecting him, and he's an enemy of our family. And she said, "Just like you killed my grandparents, and you probably even killed Michael Whalen and his son by putting your necklace on him and burning right in time to burn him and his son with my grandparents, making people think that you and my brother are dead." And Jace is like shocked and tells her to shut up. And Valentine says, "Jonathan, take your sister, or I will knock her down to give to the monster that she's protecting." So he says, "Certainly, Father," and he drags her away, and she's like shocked that he's doing this. And she said, "Are you going to let this happen? This is not right. We're not murderers. We don't let this happen. Are you going to be just like your father?" And he was shocked that she would think that, and all of a sudden he's gone. And when she looks, Luke's knocked out of the way, and the sword that Valentine had was embedded into the floor. And Jace is puts his hand on the hilt and tells his father, "You need to go." And Valentine's like shocked that his son is telling him that he has to go. And Valentine said, "Really? You're going, you're saying this to me?" And he said, "It's for your own good. And you're just a child. What's going to stop me from hurting you?" And Clary says, "We need the mortal cup." And he said, "Let me have the mortal cup." "And where is it?" And he says, "Back in Idris. And so, if I have to, I will kill you, Father." And he said, "No, you're not. You're too much of a soft-hearted person." And Luke stands up and he says, "I'll take care of it." And he puts his hand on the hilt and tells Jace to let go, and Jace lets go. And they take it out of the floor, and he points it out to Valentine. He says, "I will go with you to Idris to get the mortal cup." And then he told Clary and to take her brother through the portal after they're done and go somewhere safe. And Jace is like, "I'm not going anywhere. This is where I'm going to stay." And all of a sudden they hear a bunch of commotion out, and a thud at the door, and it gets blown through, which shocks all of them, and it's another wolf. And Jace is about to throw something at him, and she said, "No, it's a friend. It's Eric." And that gives, and right when that happens, Clary sees in the corner of her eye that Valentine has his dagger out as he's stepping back towards this mirror, and he's about to throw it at Luke. But when that happens, Elric sees it, and he jumps between Luke and the dagger and gets stabbed by the dagger and falls, which causes Luke to get on his knees to help his fallen comrade. And Valentine is stepping back towards the mirror, and Jace decides to go near his father and picks up Luke's sword and holds it against his father, and he says, "I'll go to Idris and get the mortal cup and be back." And Clary said, "No, you won't. He's going to kill you." And Valentine says, "Listen to your sister, because that's probably what's going to happen, because you're not going to be able to stop me, and I will not give you the mortal cup. You're going to have to kill me first." And he says, "I can." He says, "I doubt it." And when he gets closer to the mirror, they realize that it's a portal, and he says, "You could see Idris, your home, the meadow and the estate." And "Do you remember it?" And he said, "That's not my home. This is my home." And he said, "Whatever you say." And he steps through half or partly in it, and he takes the dagger from Jace and takes the dagger from Jace, and he's about to swing it at him, and then all of a sudden the mirror shatters, or the portal shatters, and Valentine's laughing, and Jace is just standing there letting the shards of glass fall all around him. And when it's done, he bends down and picks one up and looks at it. And Clary comes near him, and she can kind of see a glimpse of the blue sky and the fields. And Luke comes near them and asks if they're okay, and they said they're fine. And she turns around and sees a blanket over Elric's body, and she said, is Elric gone?" And he said, "Yes." So Luke goes near the window and opens up and tells the werewolves that it's over. And Luke and Clary and Jace are Luke is looking at Jace and Clary, because Clary's bending down over Jace, and he takes her glass from him because he's squeezing it so hard. And she said, "Do you know you're not supposed to play with broken glass?" And he kind of chuckles, and he gives her a big hug and swings her on his lap. and she doesn't care that Luke is looking at her like this. She's just happy that she's in his arms, like they should be. And that's all I was able to read today. I hope you like it. Hit like, hit subscribe. Now, guys, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Love you. Bye.